In today's video, I'm going to be going through each individual undrafted free agent that the New Orleans Saints have signed, and I'm going to assign them a letter grade based on how I feel about the signing and whether or not I agree with the move. So just going to give you this preface. Undrafted free agency grades, post-draft grades, we really don't know what's going to be the case until a couple of years from now, but I think it's still a fun thing to talk about. And at the end of the day, people like hearing confirmation that their team made good moves. So I'm here to do just that. But before we get into that, I need to just kind of set the scene here. So I didn't go back too far in history, more so just what the current regime has done. So here are the undrafted free agents that the Saints have signed since Dennis Allen took over as the head coach that are still around on the roster. Linebacker out of Vanderbilt, Anthony Orji. Kicker Blake Groupie, who does have some competition now with Charlie Smith, the Irish kicker the Saints brought in. Lou Hedley now has some competition. We're going to talk about who that is here in today's video. Offensive tackle / lineman Mark Evans out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. We all know him, the need for speed, Rashid freaking Shaheed. That man is a Pro Bowler. And hey, I actually love that move. And Nefi Sewell, the linebacker, he blocked a punt last year. Isaiah Foskey recovered it, or maybe it was vice versa. But point being, this is a good UDFA team, and the Saints value their undrafted free agents. Now, our offseason content, it is not slowing down. A lot of people check out after the draft, but here at Saints Now, we keep things rocking and rolling. It's only going to get better, and you're only going to get more content. So help me get to my next milestone of 27,500 subscribers ASAP by locking us in and subscribing today. So we're going to kick things off with Dalen Holker, and I gave this an A. And to be honest, I would give it an A+, but I'm trying not to be mean to some of these guys. A+ in my personal opinion, but I give him an A on paper. This might be the undrafted free agency steal of all across the NFL. I mean, this kid is so damn talented. Dalen Holker, if you guys don't remember who he is, I encourage you to just look him up on social media or on YouTube or something. Look up his highlights. There's a clip of him from the combine. He's running the gauntlet drill. He catches one ball. In another drill, he catches that ball as well with one hand. He's just rocking and rolling with two balls. Giggity. But hey, this is a really good player, and I actually think he has a good chance to make the roster. Maybe he could be somebody who unseats a Juwan Johnson, a Foster Moreau. Who knows what could happen, but I'm really rooting for Dalen Holker. It would be a lot of fun to have that long hair flowing in the bayou. So next one I want to talk about is an offensive guard. It's Kyle Hergel, and I gave him a B grade. And in terms of getting to know this player a little bit better, he's 6'2", 315 pounds. He did have a pretty nice relative athletic score of 7.83, and he played in both guard spots. And to be honest, it's actually pretty impressive. He has over 2,000 snaps at the right guard position and over 900 at the left guard position. So that's pretty interesting to note, and I do think that he could be somebody who fills in for the roster because the Saints do need better play at the interior offensive line. Now, sound off for me, Saints fans. We went through earlier and showed a bunch of the players that were undrafted free agents that ended up making the Saints roster under this current regime. Now, do you think that they're going to bring back another undrafted free agent and keep him around on the final 53-man roster? Just give me a Y for yes, give me an N for no, or type the whole word as well. I want to know if you guys know ball, and sound off with your thoughts as well. So the next player I want to discuss is Matt Hayball, the punter out of Vanderbilt. So fun fact about him, just like Lou Hedley, he's an Australian kicker, Australian-style kicker, and he's going to have that Australian style of punt where it's not you're holding the ball and you're just booting it. You're kind of running around and in that process kicking the hell out of the ball. So worth noting, he did have an average hang time of 3.88 seconds, and Lou Hedley in the NFL had an average of 4.04, which by far was the lowest hang time across the NFL. But in terms of why Hayball might make the roster, he had a long punt of 71 yards, and 26 out of his 59 punts landed inside the 20-yard line. So if the Saints want to get younger at the punter position, I still think that they value Lou Hedley. And I know that he doesn't flip the field, but he's really, really good at downing it inside the 20. So I think that that's something to think about. And the NFL might be kind of heading towards that direction anyway. Again, I want somebody who can flip the field and put the ball inside the 20 with no problem. So maybe Hayball can do that. But if not, Headley, you got somebody coming for your job. Jermaine Jackson, the wide receiver out of Idaho. He's also a kick return specialist in what would be a Saints offseason without bringing in, or undrafted free agency class without bringing in a kick return specialist. So I want to throw this up here right now. This quote from Jermaine Jackson absolutely gets me fired up. The game is better with the ball in my hands. I love that confidence. That alone made this an A grade for me. But on top of that, his kick return and punt yards are really impressive. 666 kick return yards, 604 punt return yards for Idaho, for the Vandals. I absolutely like this move. And I do think that if he does make the roster, it gives Rashid Shaheed the ability to focus on being a receiver. Now, Mason Tipton, he's a wide receiver out of Yale. I gave him a B grade. And it's nothing against the player specifically. I just think his route to making the roster might be a little difficult. He's 5'11", 191 pounds. He did have a really impressive 40-yard dash at 4.33. And his production, 10 touchdowns, is pretty damn good. And he was pretty damn consistent for Yale. So that's a player that I think has a chance to make the roster. But look at the depth chart. I could see it being an uphill battle for him. I think that it could be a difficult route to the 53-man roster for Tipton or any of these wide receivers that the Saints brought in as an undrafted free agent. But we do know that they value those players, so don't be surprised if we see Tipton catching balls in the regular season. Now, really quick reminder, if you guys haven't already, we have Saints jerseys available. If you use our link, chatsports.com/Saints jerseys, you can get a Kool-Aid McKinstry jersey. You can get a Spencer Rattler. You can go get Bub Means, Talise Fuanga. Any of the players that the Saints drafted, you can go and get them there, or you can go and get their jersey today. I will say this for the picture. I know it's 00. It's not the number they're wearing. It's just a placeholder number. So once we get what number they are, Fanatics will then ship it to you, and you can have one of the first Saints jerseys that are Spencer Rattler or Kool-Aid McKinstry. So use our link. It's in the comment section and description of the video. Now, Nouredin Nully, I gave this one an A grade, and I do think that this is a player that could make the roster because of how versatile he is. He's kind of a swing guard, can play on both sides, just like Kyle Hergel. But in terms of the guard spot, a lot less snaps than Hergel. 919 on the left, 543 on the right. I really think that one of those guys will make it, so it'll just be a matter of which one does end up making it. But I do like the fact that Nully is coming out of Nebraska. Big Ten always produces really good offensive linemen, so I'm going to be going with the corn-fed kid. Nathan Latu, he is an edge rusher out of Oklahoma State. I gave him a B+ because I do think that the Saints defensive line, I like it. Let's take a look at the updated depth chart, and I think that this is a solid unit, but I do think that, an edge rusher would have been nice to have in New Orleans and take as a draft pick. He does have an above-average relative athletic score of 7.21. He had 10.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and a forced fumble for the Cowboys last year in Stillwater. Shout out to my little brother. And he does have a different body type that the Saints are used to. He stands at 6'4.5", 250 pounds. So maybe this is a player that can bring another element to the pass rush. Now, Kyle Sheets, he's a wide receiver. This is a real college. Slippery Rock. It is a real place. I Googled it. I saw a picture of the campus. It exists. I gave him an A- grade, and to be honest, I actually think that Sheets might have the best possibility of making the roster. Listen to this. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. He had a relative athletic score of 9.44. We all know how much the Saints value that. 76 receptions, 1,186 yards. And ladies and gentlemen, 17 touchdowns. I understand it's at a smaller school, so the production is probably a lot better, and it is not going to be similar gameplay in similar competition as it was in the NFL that it was at Slippery Rock. So I just really like the size profile for this kid, and I think that he could be a really nice big-bodied guy to have as a weapon. So I think that this is a fun addition. Do I think he makes the roster? That we'll have to wait and see. Now, Millard Bradford, this is actually a really good addition in my opinion. I gave it an A grade because I really like the player, and I really like what he's capable of. He stands at 5'11", 190 pounds, and he's an extremely versatile defensive back. And for the Horned Frogs last year, he's been the primary nickel, but he also played at both safety spots. So this is a player that you can have line up in the middle of the field, down in the box, and you can trust him to be an effective player because he has so many snaps logged there, and he's an experienced player. But you can also rely on him to drop back in coverage if you need him to be a safety kind of over the top, filling in depending on the rotation. Now, a name that a lot of Saints fans might be familiar with is Sincere Haynesworth. He was the center out of Tulane. And I think that the Saints bringing in a center does make some sense. I think that Eric McCoy is a damn good player, but having some depth behind him, I actually like. Going into last season, or actually during last season and going into the offseason, Saints didn't have a backup center. So I like the idea of doing this. I will say this, he also has some experience as a guard. Not as much experience as he does at the center position, but I do think that having a backup center might make some sense for the Saints. Now, Kyler Baugh, I gave the defensive tackle out of Minnesota. The Golden Gopher gets a B. And I just think that the Saints defensive line, we saw it a little bit ago, it's a good unit. But I just think that Kyler's route to the roster might be kind of tough. Also, maybe I was a little bit critical because his name's Kyler, and I picked off a guy named Kyler Murray. In case you guys didn't know, this is a new flash for everybody. So be honest for me, Saints fans. Are you more excited about the season? Are you less excited about the season? Are you kind of at the same after the NFL draft? For me, I'm way more excited. I'm so pumped up to see this QB2 battle. I can't wait to see how some of this young talent develops with the New Orleans Saints. And honestly, this defense is going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to see the defense. I can't wait to see Clint Kubiak's offense get installed to the team. So I'm typing my M's for more excited, but it's your turn to sound off in the comments. So Jacob Kibodi, the running back out of Louisiana, I gave him a B grade, and I do think that he is a player that could be effective. He played out at UL-Lafayette this past season, and he actually started his career off at Texas A&M, transferred to Incarnate Word, and then he hung out with Lafayette. U-la-la, as I like to call him. But here's how the depth chart for New Orleans shakes out. Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, there's no shockers there. I do want to say I think that it might be an uphill battle for Kibodi to make the roster. The Saints do value James Robinson as a practice squad option. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to roll with Jordan Mims. So we'll have to see how things pan out. But I think that Kibodi definitely has an uphill battle to find himself a spot in September. Now, Lawrence Johnson, a safety defensive back out of Southeast Missouri State. I gave him a B-. I just think that the size for him is pretty impressive, and what he's capable of is definitely something that the Saints could hone in and get good development under Dennis Allen, but I'm also not sold on the fact that he's a player that's definitely going to make the roster. I'm all in on signing a guy like Justin Simmons, and if that does happen, I think that Lawrence Johnson's route to the postseason, or to the roster, is a little bit difficult. And on top of that, they signed Will Harris today, the defensive back who played with the Detroit Lions. So I think that Lawrence Johnson has a tough route to make the roster. Now, Rico Payton, he's a cornerback out of Pitt State. I gave him a B- grade. And here's the thing about Rico Payton. He could find himself a spot on the roster, and I don't think that he is somebody that, has a massive chance to make it, but he does have some ball skills. He has really nice athleticism. He can cover in the slot. So maybe if that's something that the Saints need, Payton can fill that hole. But Isaiah Stalbird, this is a really intriguing player because at South Dakota State, he was a linebacker. But he also logged snaps at covering in the slot and at safety for the Jackrabbits. So I gave this grade an A-. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. And I'm just going to let the athleticism speak for itself. A 9.5 RAS, that's pretty damn good. Over 1,000 snaps in the slot. He is undersized for a linebacker, but maybe they can move him around and find another role for him. I do trust Dennis Allen's judgment when it comes to developing young defensive talent. So I think that this is definitely a player to keep your eyes on during training camp. And my favorite addition, the only one to get an A+. Pig Suey! I'm going A+ for the edge rusher out of Arkansas, Trajan Jeffcoat. And here's a little bit more about the player. Yeah, I'm giving him more of a graphic. I'm showing a little bit more love because I went to Arkansas and it's my show, so I can do whatever the hell I want. 6'4", 266 pounds. He did transfer from Missouri to Arkansas, and in his senior season was pretty good for the Razorbacks. Sam Pittman, the head coach in Fayetteville, spoke very highly about this player. They were really excited to land him in the transfer portal. And on top of that, he has a similar size profile to Cameron Jordan. In his career, he had 98 tackles, 28 tackles for loss, 15.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and even had a pass breakup. So there is all of my UDFA grades. If you guys want to rip me on social media, feel free. Trace Gerard 48 on X. And then on top of that, it's Trace Gerard 48 _ on Instagram if you guys want to give me a follow there. Been trying to do some spaces, trying to up my social media game, so it'd mean a lot if you hit me up. But y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.